Hello and welcome to the Riptide Afterparty, the party which I suppose is a house party really, because we're all sitting in a little bit more these days because we're all very sensible and we're all trying to take care of one another. So this is going to be a shorter episode than normal. I am basically going to be giving you a one-off feature throughout the whole podcast. But before I do that, there is always news. That's right, there may not be any shows, but there is still some news. The news is keep your eye on Riptide Wrestling's merchandise. Here we are in May, and they've released 3 shirts, one after another recently, and they've all been very different. We've had a pink t-shirt with which is like a ringer design around the sleeves and neck, which has like an athletic style design on it. We've had a long sleeve, which pays homage to the filming style of wrestling. Very interesting cinematic independent based design. And then we've just had something out which looks more like a cool nocturnal design, almost like something out of, I don't know, Kiki's Delivery Service or something. But they've all been very different designs, and I think that's great. I think it's great to have that much variety. Obviously, if you like a shirt and you buy them, it does support the company. But I think more than that, they're just bloody cool. Is that the end of the merch? I don't know. I'm just a podcaster. Now, I know what you're thinking. This isn't news, this is a plug. And you're right. Well done you. Gold star. Pat on the back. But it is kind of news because all of these shirts came out with pre-orders, and if you pre-order them, you're guaranteed them. If not, I guess whatever surplus stock they have go on sale on the website. So this news really is keep an eye on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, whatever social media is your one of choice. Find Riptide Wrestling on it. Keep an eye on their merch section. And the second piece of news is, for the foreseeable future, Charlie Evans has announced she is returning to Australia. Of course, Charlie Evans is one half of Medusa Complex, who won the Brighton Spirit Tag Team Tournament. But Charlie has said she is planning to return to England and return to the wrestling scene over here once everything's up and running again. So it's not permanent, she's just going back to her family. But I just thought, I'm sure we've all got fun Riptide-based memories, whether it's her as the Bride of Frankenstein in a Halloween match, or whether it was the tag team tournament match against the Rascals. That was absolutely incredible, wasn't it? But I just thought I'd share that so that once the British scene starts up again and we can all enjoy live wrestling, not only do we have the scene as a whole to look forward to, we'll also have Charlie Evans' return at some stage to look forward to too. And now the news is done, let's move on to the main feature. So I thought what I would do for this episode is to recommend a few matches from Riptide's history that you can watch on their demand service. Matches that don't always come up in discussion in the forums or on social media, but which are still well worth a look. And what I've decided to call these is Sunken Treasure. You get the aquatic theme. I think you see where I was going with that one. So let's dig up some of this Sunken Treasure. If you're lucky, I won't do that impression again. Now, I thought because, potentially I might be doing a few of these here and there, I thought I'd try and give it a little structure. This is going to be focused on 2017, so it's Riptide's inaugural year. Matches which are well worth a rewatch if you've seen them before, maybe with a fresh coat, with a fresh coat of eyes. A fresh coat of eyes? A fresh pair of eyes, or a fresh coat of paint. Yeah, no, they're matches which are well worth watching again, even if they're not the ones that always get the fanfare. There's little things about them which I think make them worth revisiting. Now, of course, I can't pick anything from show 1 because it wasn't put up on demand because the quality of the footage wasn't deemed good enough. So just use your imagination for that. So the first of these treasures I thought would be from show 2, Riptide Returns. What I'm picking from this is Chuck Mambo versus TK Cooper. Ah, that's right. They actually fought each other before. If you've listened to this podcast enough, you'll know I've waxed lyrical about how much I like Mambo and Cooper's 2 title matches. I think their encounters over the Riptide Championship are 2 of the finest matches in all of Riptide's history so far. I think they really elevated themselves in those matches. But it's easy to forget they did fight each other early on in Riptide's history. What's really interesting is it's like listening to a band's early albums before they find their sound. If we go back and watch it, you have Chuck Mambo with his long spiky hair, and he's always a fun-loving guy. But him and TK having a real jovial match. There's lots of playing around. There's pauses to talk to the crowd. There's quipping in between. Now, if you compare and contrast this with their later matches for the title, where it's much more serious, where there's a real storyline going on, and there's a real almost brotherly competitiveness, then it makes such a contrast with this match. So it's really kind of fun to go back and watch this, knowing where they'd both end up later on in the card. And I mean, there's a certain sequence in it which I think really exemplifies that, which is there's something. I don't want to ruin it because I'm trying to recommend you rewatch it. So I'm talking around things to jog your memory if you've seen these before, and if not, if you're watching it for the first time because of this, I'm preempting it so you'll focus on certain moments. And there is a sequence where there are some camera people who get involved in the action, and it was such a brilliant moment when you were there live to see. It really sort of summed up the fun they were having. But rewatching it now, it's still great fun. It's still funny, but again, it's the juxtaposition of they wouldn't do that now in a title match because it wouldn't suit their characters and it wouldn't suit the fact that they would be fighting over a title belt now. So I do think it's great fun to go back and look at this sort of Mambo and Cooper, where they were still very talented guys who'd still worked all around the country and had skill sets, and they were booked for a reason. But they certainly weren't what they've become now, with a sort of a growth in confidence and growth in character work, and I'd say growth in the physical work as well. So definitely check out TK Cooper versus Chuck Mambo #1 from Riptide Returns. My second recommendation is from the third show of 2017, The Storm. This features someone you might be familiar with. He's called Spike Trevay. He's taken on dazzling Daryl Allen. Now, at this stage, Spike's character had been introduced, he'd already lost some matches, and the wheels were starting to turn that he wasn't necessarily a happy chappy about his treatment at Riptide. But I would say that this is where his character and his relationship to the Riptide fanbase really starts to take seed, because you get Trevay's frustrations laid bare, and that would be the entire groundwork for everything that's built up to now. You get a real expression of why he's unhappy with the crowd, how he feels he's been mistreated, which of course will lead to him ultimately chasing the championship. But more than that, it's really just interesting on a performance level, because you'll really see Trevay, his interaction with the crowd, how he can flip from comedy one-liners to heckling to really quite serious line deliveries. And if you're watching him since he's become champion, how really cruel and mean and vicious he comes across. If you go back and watch this now, this one now at the start of this match from the Storm 2017, then you get glimpses of that. But it's mixed with him sort of responding to hecklers in the crowd and things like that. It's just a really interesting vision of where the character would go, and that's all based on multiple things, not just the crowd, not just himself. It's based on all the couple of years subsequent stories and build up. But I think it's really interesting that you could already see that he wasn't just going to be a 2D character. He wasn't just going to be a complete, he's the posh toff who feels entitled. No, there was something, a darker streak running through him even then, and it was really interesting to go back and see that, along with seeing just the sheer charisma of being able to hold a crowd for an extended period. Because you've got to bear in mind, for this match, it's early on in the show, it's early on in Riptide's history, and you've got someone who was still building a name for himself on the scene, is going out and has just got a mic and is holding the audience's attention captive just with his wordplay. So I guess it's interesting because you can see even then his ability to hold a crowd through sheer character work and through presence, which has certainly gone on to dominate his interactions with the audience now. But all of that, almost, my focusing only on Trevay so far, I don't want to do a disservice to Daryl Allen, because as he mentions in the promo, Daryl Allen helped train Spike Trevay. So what you get is two people who know each other very well, and as such, you get a really fast-paced, action-packed match. I'd forgotten how good this one was, actually. It's just slick. It's slick and it's fast, and it shows two people who know each other well enough to have a good chemistry together. I will say right now there's an unexpected ending to it. I would say perhaps the most unusual in Riptide's history. And bearing in mind there has been a gunge tank match and a drinking contest, that's possibly saying something. But if you were there in person, you know why, and maybe you've seen it again, seeing how it's been handled on the video on demand will put a smile on your face. If you haven't seen this before, maybe watching it on video on demand, you see a little cameo from someone who would go on to have a bigger role in Riptide later on. My third match from 2017, which is the old Sunken treasure. Yeah, I didn't do the accent that time, did I? This is from Point Break 2017. Good name for a show, that. This is Jack Sexsmith versus Cara Noir. Of course, these days, Cara Noir is very much established as the plucky fighter who the crowd love and you know, is trying to overcome adversity and express who he is as an over-the-top character. Which is what makes this all the more interesting to go back and watch, because at the time, Cara Noir was a much darker, more twisted version of the Black Swan, who was there to kind of really psych out opponents with how bizarre he was. And he was taking on instead a really charismatic, beloved figure in Jack Sexsmith. This is definitely worth going back and seeing because of a couple of reasons. Not only does it take you back to what Cara Noir was a couple of years ago, before he sort of developed in front of the crowd and won them over, it also gives us a reason to revisit Jack Sexsmith, who, of course, has very unfortunately had to retire due to injury. But don't forget, he was a massive part of Riptide's early years. He was being built in a main event storyline. He had great moments. He was one of the Riptide Rumble winners. And you can see how beloved he is in this match. You can see the crowd rallying behind him. So it's a great reason to revisit just how popular Jack Sexsmith was at Riptide, and still is. I'm sure the fans still love him. But you get that mixed with seeing Cara Noir's much more sinister side. Now, on top of that, you also see a more aggressive Jack Sexsmith. On this here, he really goes on the offensive a lot more than he often does. Often, I'd say he's a defensive wrestler most of the time. He's kind of selling... You know, generally he's selling and gaining crowd empathy and sympathy. But in this, he's actually much more aggressive, and I think it makes for a really interesting encounter there. He's as full on the attack as Noir is. Also, just on a visual level, this one's really interesting because it's a conflict of opposites, really. You've got the mute Cara Noir versus the really vocal Jack Sexsmith. You know, one says nothing the whole time, the other one is often sort of trash talking or calling out or you know, shouting in pain to get the crowd on his side. Cara Noir has essentially a blank face because of the face paint, whereas Jack Sexsmith, it's all about expressiveness and showing his face and sort of, you know, showing the pain he's in. And Cara Noir is in black, and it's quite... It's basically two-tone. He's in black, he's got some silver on his face, and he's a white guy. So, I suppose that's three-tone, really, but you know what I'm saying. Whereas Jack Sexsmith's in bright-coloured gear. So you do get these two opposites facing each other. And you know, in your mood, you get the impression that Cara Noir's a mean, miserable creature that just wants the world to fear him and will never understand him. Whereas Jack Sexsmith wants to be loved and embraced and is really energetic and wants the crowd to fuel him up as much as he fuels them up. So it's a contrast of character work. I think it just really stood out to me even more on the second viewing. So that mixed with how fast-paced the action is and the more aggressive Jack's style, and seeing Noir back as he used to be, even just a few years ago, how different it is. I think it's really something, and it's a great one to go back to even after only a couple of years. My final recommendation from 2017 is from Blackwater. This is Millie McKenzie versus Omari. There's not necessarily much going into it in terms of character and story, quite honestly, but just watching the way they throw each other around the ring, you know, they're obviously very confident at just going full pelt at slamming one another, and it gets the crowd invested, and I just thought it was just a tight, short match, basically. The other matches I've recommended so far, they tie into really looking back on character development and looking back and seeing how performers have changed and how they've sort of grown. I don't think that's necessarily true in this case. I just thought it was a fun match. And after the match, you do get, if you keep watching, you do get a fun little segment involving, well, let's just say Santa's Little Helper and Santa's Little Helper's rival. We'll leave it at that, but it's always fun to see this particular person get thrown around the ring. Yar! And that was it. I know, it was a short episode, much shorter than normal. Maybe you're happier about that, I don't know. But by ending early, it just means you've got time to go and check out Riptide's video on demand service at riptidewrestling.com. That's all I've got to say for this episode at this time. but I hope you enjoy revisiting these matches as much as I did. Because this has only been the 2017 version, there may well be more to come. So keep an ear out. Maybe I'll dig out some more Sunken treasure. Yeah, that's right. I felt like I could get one more in there. Until then, thanks for listening. See you next time. I won't see you next time. I'll hear you next time. I won't even hear you. You'll hear me. Bye.